Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We're back again with more Pathfinder, Wrath of the Righteous. This time, I am happy to do this one. Ember. Let's level her up and see how to build her up. I have had so many comments from people who are confused about how to make the most out of Ember, and I don't understand how it's possible. In my personal opinion, Ember is the most versatile party member you get. Period. Bar none. She can, all at the same time, in the class that you get her in, be your number 2 healer, your number 2 damage dealer, your number 1 buffer, and your number 1 debuffer. I say your number 2 healer because she does not have the ability to channel energy, which I prefer all my healers to have. But if you don't care about that, frankly, she can be your number 1 healer. And I say your number 2 damage dealer because I love using her to buff my party. So a lot of her slots get taken up with spells that are meant to buff my party. So she can't just fill up with stuff that's meant to blow up a room the way WoTR can. But if you don't care about buffing or you don't use her to buff, she can absolutely be your number 1 damage dealer. She is just that amazing, just that versatile. Let me show you how she gets it done. But before we do that, let's talk about the negatives with Ember. And I think this is yet another case where Owlcat really screws us with the feats that our party members start with. So she starts with point blank shot and precise shot. And she's got a 16 in dexterity. Now, all this together would give you the impression that she could make a decent archer if you run out of spell slots for whatever reason, and that you can use spells that require her to roll for an attack the way WoTR can. This is not the case because Ember is a witch, and all witches have to take on a curse. In Ember's case, her curse is blackened, and blackened gives you a -4 penalty on all weapon attack rolls. You won't be able to see that until we get to the hex menu. I'll show it there, but until level 10, her penalty is 4. At level 10, it's lowered to 2, but even all the way up to level 20, she always takes a -2 penalty on any weapon attack rolls. So all those spells that we loved on WoTR, like Scorching Ray, Battering Blast, things of that nature, all those spells that do touch attacks, she takes a -4 penalty to all of them. So you do not want to use those types of spells with Ember, which also means these feats are basically useless until you get to level 10, where that penalty has come down to the point that you might reasonably consider using some of those spells that require a weapon attack roll. So even though she has a couple of feats and we get her at level 4, you really need to consider this just like WoTR, starting off completely from scratch, trying to make her a great caster. But it doesn't really matter because the hexes that she starts out with are fantastic. So first and foremost, hexes, unlike spells, can be used an infinite amount of times, as long as you're targeting different enemies. For most hexes, it'll say that one particular creature cannot be targeted by that hex more than once per day, which is fine. You basically can take a hex, use it against everybody you're fighting up against, and then in the next fight, use it on all those people again. Unlike spells, which have a certain amount of slots you can use per day before you have to rest. Now, Ember starts with Vulnerability Curse, which is okay. It basically makes your enemies vulnerable to energy. That's great if you have a bunch of people who are throwing around different spells that use fire, ice, or things of that nature. But if you don't, then this really isn't all that worthwhile. But the other one she has is Slumber. Slumber is the hex version of sleep, except it affects creatures of any HD, which means you can keep using this all the way up to the time when you're able to upgrade to Restless Slumber. I use this on Ember all throughout Act 1. Virtually all the enemies except for ghouls are immune to sleep, but all the enemies that are susceptible to sleep are also susceptible to this, and she can absolutely crowd control whole groups of enemies, slumbering them one after another. It is amazing. With her starting off build, she also gets a Raven Familiar, which gives her a bonus to Persuasion and Perception. And then she only has simple weapon proficiencies. Again, you're not using Ember to be great at weapons. And with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the build. So when it comes to ability points, you want to level up Charisma. That is her spell casting attribute, and you want to keep increasing it throughout all her level ups. For skills, I'll be honest, it's not all that impressive. She does get Knowledge Arcana. If you don't have anybody else who uses that, you can go ahead and level her up with it. She also gets Persuasion and Use Magic Device. You can keep her in that if you want to. She does get a little bit in Religion as well. If you don't have anybody else specializing in Religion, you can go ahead and use her for this. But just keep in mind, she's not going to be increasing Wisdom. So she's not going to be able to get the sky-high Religion numbers that your main character could get or Soseo could get if you had him on the team. If there's any one of these skills that you really don't care about, instead put the points into Perception. You all know how I feel about Perception. Okay, now we are finally into the hexes. So first and foremost, if you want to use her as a healer, the healing option is here. Also, throughout all the spells that we go through, she's always going to have cure light wounds, cure moderate wounds, things of that nature. I always have a separate healer with me, so I'm not going to be selecting those spells in this build. But if for whatever reason you did not want to use Soseo or Darren and instead wanted to make Ember your main healer, you can absolutely do that. Select the healing hex and then make sure you're getting all those healing spells at the various spell levels that she gets. She does go all the way up to level 9. But in this build, for your first hex, I recommend Evil Eye. It is amazing. So it's going to start out as a -2 penalty, and then you get to choose what you want to impact. AC, ability checks, attack rolls, saving throws, or skill checks. The hex will last a number of rounds equal to 3 plus the charisma modifier of Ember. A will save reduces this to just 1 round. That's important to keep in mind. So no matter what, when you use Evil Eye, it will hit. It's just a matter of how many rounds will this enemy be affected. So what I like to do is let all my people surround a particular hard to deal with enemy in a way where I know they'll be able to attack them, and then hit that creature with Evil Eye, and then let everybody go crazy while the creature is experiencing this debuff. At 8th level, the penalty increases to a -4. Bananas. All right, then at level 4, honestly, she doesn't have anything that's all that great for her to use. Oh, I'm sorry, there's one other thing that I should mention. In fact, going back here. So this is where you can see Blackened, all right? And you'll notice that there's that -4 penalty on weapon attack rolls, and then it becomes -2 at 10th level. But because she has this curse, she also gets fire spells over time as she levels up. So at level 5, she's going to get Scorching Ray and Burning Arc. At level 10, you get Fire Snake. And then at level 15, you get Hellfire Ray. Now, the thing to keep in mind is these are all 1 level later than the time that you would get these spells if you were Woljif or Naniel. So your other party members will get these spells earlier. But these spells are not in the Witch's spellbook. So it's a boon to Ember, because if she didn't get them in this way, she wouldn't have them at all. So you can make Ember your #1 fire mage and allow her to do huge damage against the enemies you're going up against. Now, going back to level 2. So she's automatically going to get Burning Arc and Scorching Ray, but it's just going to be at a later level. So for now, Scare is an absolutely fantastic crowd control spell, and at this point, you're still in Act 1, so a lot of enemies will be susceptible to it. That's what I personally like to take. If you wanted to give Ember some more protection, you could go with False Life, or if you wanted to focus on damage, you could go with Bone Shaker. For your level 1 feat, again, we're starting all the way from scratch, so go ahead and get Spell Penetration. At level 5 for spell level 1, I go ahead and get Enlarged Person. You're going to have Seela. She benefits a lot from this spell. And then for the level 2, I get False Life. At level 6, I pick up Fortune. You can target one of your party members, and it's going to allow that particular individual to re-roll any ability check, attack roll, saving throw, or skill check, taking the better result. This is absolutely fantastic when you're either going up against a boss that's very hard to hit, so you want to help your party members in that way, or you've got a very, very difficult skill check, and if you fail it, you would probably save scum. So instead, you're just going to use Fortune to try to help ensure that you're able to successfully do this skill check. And then for your 6th level, that's when things start getting really, really good for Ember. You want to go ahead and pick up Heroism. This is going to give you a +2 morale bonus on attack rolls, saves, and skill checks. So it's great both defensively and offensively. However, it is not communal. So you have to cast Heroism on each individual party member. This is part of the reason why Ember is your number 2 damage dealer. She's going to have to fill up her slots with spells like this. For your level 7 feat, get Spell Focus, Evocation. For your level 1 spell, grab Reduce Person. For your level 2 spell, grab Bone Shaker. And then for your spell level 3, grab Dispel Magic. So at level 8, I like to get Cackle. It allows you as a move action to extend the rounds of Evil Eye, Fortune, Protective Luck, and Misfortune. So you can start the battle with, let's say, Evil Eye. And then in the next round, cast Protective Luck and cast Cackle to extend the effects of both. It is great, great stuff. Really allows you to both buff your party and debuff enemies all at the same time in a very, very efficient way for Ember. At spell level 4, you want to get Death Ward. It's going to give you a +4 morale bonus on saves against all death spells and magical death effects. So when you see your party members with negative levels, or sometimes with damage to a particular attribute score, a lot of times that's because a death effect took hold of them. Death Ward is going to ensure, or at least help ensure, that that doesn't happen. You definitely want this on any of your frontline fighters. For most of the game, I would say your backline fighters, as long as you're keeping them away from where the action really is, aren't going to be targeted by this. But later in the game, it's possible that more enemies are going to be targeting your backline, and you might need to throw this on all of your party members. As far as I know, there's no communal version of Death Ward. So at level 9, you want to go ahead and get Greater Spell Penetration. For spell level 3, you want to get Delay Poison Communal. And then for your next level 4 spell, you want to get Dimension Door. There are a lot of situations in the game where it's very, very useful to be able to teleport, whether it's to get a hidden object or to hit a switch for a trap that's a far ways away. You definitely want to have somebody with this spell slotted. And Ember is great for it because she casts spells spontaneously. So she's much more likely to be able to have a couple of these available, as opposed to if Woljif has to manually have it slotted and misses out on more damage. So at level 10, you finally have access to major hexes. So you start out with regular hexes, you get major hexes at level 10, and then at level 18, you get access to the grand hex. And the first major hex I definitely like is Restless Slumber. It is the upgrade to Slumber, but this time there's also a damage effect that is coupled with it. Again, there is no HD limit on Slumber. You can use it the whole game if you want to. Honestly, at spell level 5, I don't see anything that I feel like is all that great for Ember. You can take Break Enchantment if you wanted some way to ensure you could protect yourself against enchantments, transmutations, and curses. That's about it. And at spell level 11, you can go Greater Spell Focus, Evocation. Also remember that now that you're at past spell level 10, your penalty to weapon attacks has been decreased to -2 So now it's much more comfortable to be able to use spells like Scorching Ray and Hellfire Ray, which you'll get a few levels later. You can add a little bit more variety to what kind of damage you're doing. At spell level 4, go ahead and grab False Life Greater. For your level 12 Hex, you can get Protective Luck. Whenever a creature is targeted by an effect that requires an attack roll, the attacker must roll twice and take the worst result. If you're playing on harder difficulties, you might want to take this earlier. It is great protection for your front line. And again, it is impacted by Cackle, so you can extend the amount of time that your front line is protected. And so now at spell level 6, remember that you're going to get Hellfire Ray automatically, so you can decide for yourself whether or not you want to take it here. I almost feel like it being listed here is a bug, because none of the other fire spells that she automatically gets are listed in the spell book. So I don't think it's supposed to be here. But regardless, for me personally, I love taking Heroism Greater here. It's going to take that +2 morale bonus of Heroism and increase it to +4, while also giving you immunity to fear effects and some temporary hit points. And at spell level 13, I like going improved initiative. So Ember, she gets a decent dexterity score in 16, but because she's your debuffer and she buffs in a way where it only lasts for 1 round, I just like the idea of her being able to jump out right at the beginning of combat and start tearing things up. So to me, this makes sense for her. And then for spell level 6, I grabbed Dispel Magic Greater. For your level 14 Hex, I grabbed Misfortune. So anytime a creature makes an ability check, attack roll, saving throw, or skill check, it must roll twice and take the worst result. Yet another Hex that is impacted by Cackle. So at spell level 7, you've got a bunch of fantastic options for Ember. If you've been using her for healing, obviously Cure Moderate Wounds, Mass, and Heal are fantastic options for her. Even though it's not a fire spell, Chain Lightning is just amazing in this game. It's one of the most damaging evocation spells you can have. So it might be worth taking for Ember. True Seeing Communal, there are a ton of enemies in this game that use invisibility, displacement, things of that nature in order to ward off your attacks. True Seeing is going to cut through all of that, well worth taking. Do not be afraid at all of that Diamond Dust penalty. There are a ton of opportunities to loot Diamond Dust in the game, and there are a lot of vendors that will allow you to buy huge stacks of Diamond Dust. And on top of that, in this build at least, we're building up Ember to have her buffs on for 24 hours. So you're not going to need to cast it all that often in order for it to provide protection for your team. So by all means, it's a worthy choice. Legendary Proportions is an amazing buff to any of your melee party members. However, keep in mind, it does cost a dinosaur bone, and dinosaur bones are actually very, very rare. I don't think any vendors sell them, and you only get a certain amount of them in the game. So you don't want to use this lightly. But if you know you're about to go through a hard dungeon, by all means, go ahead, pop it on, and make sure your melee party members are set up for success. Me personally, at this level, I take Ice Body. It's going to ensure Ember is immune to ability score damage, blindness, critical hits, disease, drowning, electricity, poison, stunning, and all spells or attacks that affect her physiology or respiration. So just amazing, amazing protection for Ember. For your level 15 feat, I go to Elemental Focus, Fire. And then at level 7, I take True Seeing Communal. At level 16, I take Ice Plant. I'll be honest, I'm not all that high on it. It gives you a +2 natural armor bonus to AC. This is huge for Camellia, because you can also get a ring for her that'll increase that bonus further, and that all happens in Act 1 when she really, really needs it. But to me, AC is something where either you want to bump it up to crazy high levels, or you just leave it alone. Having middle of the road AC doesn't really do a whole lot for you. And so I didn't feel the need to take this earlier for Ember, because I'm like, it's not really going to be the difference between life and death for her. But any other hex you take right now will require you to manually cast it. And I know I'm not going to manually cast them. So even though this doesn't mean all that much, I don't have to do anything to make that natural armor bonus happen. It's just automatic, so I take it here. All right, and now we're at spell level 8. I take Frightful Aspect. It's going to give you a bunch of physical bonuses, which are not really relevant for her. But it also gives you spell resistance equal to 10 plus half your caster level. And you're going to emit an aura that causes enemy creatures within the aura to be shaken. Any melee characters that have shattered defenses are definitely going to benefit from this. And keep in mind, it is not affected by a target spell resistance. At level 17, I get Greater Elemental Focus, Fire. And then for the level 7 spell, I get Legendary Proportions. And then I grab Storm Bolts. So Storm Bolts is going to do up to 20 d8 damage towards all enemies around you in a 30-foot burst. And they're also stunned for 1 round unless they're able to succeed on a Fortitude save. But here's the thing. The party AI is not intelligent enough to know that your party member is not surrounded by any enemies, and therefore Storm Bolts would not do anything. So you can't really just right click on this and have Ember automatically use it, because all that is going to happen is she'll be all the way in the back where no enemies are, and she'll be popping off Storm Bolts all on her own. So if you're going to take this, you also have to commit to positioning her in a way where Storm Bolts will actually impact the enemies. However, keep in mind, when she hits this off, it is absolutely amazing. You've already got spell focus and evocation. You've already got spell penetration. So it should oftentimes stun multiple enemies that you're going up against. Great, great stuff. And here at level 18, we finally have access to Grand Hexes. I like Life Giver. It allows you to revive party members without having to give up a diamond. And then we also have access to level 9 spells. So you've got some great options for Ember here. Foresight is going to ensure that your tanks are never caught flat-footed, and they're going to get a +2 insight bonus to AC and on reflex saves. So on tanks that are potentially stacking AC, like Camellia or perhaps Sela, this is going to be great stuff. You also get Mind Blink Communal, which is going to take that +8 resistance bonus on saving throws against all mind-affecting spells and apply it to your entire party for 4 hours. Absolutely fantastic. And then you don't get any evocation spells here, but you do get Wail of the Banshee. It's necromancy, but it deals 10 points of damage per caster level. And there is no cap on it. So as Ember's caster level keeps climbing, this spell will keep climbing with it. You could definitely consider it. Only issue is that it does also impact your party members. So it's all creatures within a 40-foot burst, not all enemies. So keep that in mind. Me personally at this point, I go with Heroic Invocation, which is the final version of Heroism. Still +4 morale bonus, more temporary hit points, but now they're immune to both fear and charm effects for the spell's duration. Very powerful stuff. At level 19 for your feat, I'd go with Combat Casting. It's going to give you a +4 bonus on concentration checks. And then for your level 19 spell, I'd get Mind Blink Communal. And then at level 20 for your final hex, I'm just going to be honest, I'm not particularly big on any of these hexes. So I don't use any of them. I will point out, if you wanted to make a natural weapons build, Nails is available, and there's also Beast Gift, and then there's one more that I think will actually, Animal Skin will actually turn you into an animal as well. But outside of that, yeah, there's nothing here that I really use. If I'm maybe underestimating something that you all use a lot, definitely let me know down in the comments. But I would say at level 20, pick whatever you want if there's something missing that you feel like fits in with your playstyle. And at level 20 for me, I grab Foresight. Even though Wail of the Banshee is fantastic, I use Ember as a fire mage, so fire is what I'm really focused on. Okay, so now that we've went through all the character levels, let's go through the mythic path. First level, I'd pick Abundant Casting. At second level, you have to kind of make a choice. What's more important to you? Do you prefer to use Ember as your damage dealer, at which point you would take spell penetration here? Or Is it much more important to you that she's competent as the buffer of your party? At which point I would recommend you take enduring spells. It basically comes down to your team and your playstyle. For me personally, I take enduring spells, and I understand that because I don't have spell penetration, Ember is not going to be able to penetrate enemy defenses as often as I would prefer, but I'm going to get to the point that my buffs last 24 hours much quicker by going this route, which is more important to me for Ember specifically. At Mythic Level 3, I get improved abundant casting. At Mythic Level 4, I get greater enduring spells. At Mythic Level 5, I get greater abundant casting. And then at level 6, I finally go ahead and say, okay, it's time to make Ember the damaging monster that I know she can be. So I get Spell Penetration Mythic. And then at spell level 7, I get Ascendant Element Fire. At spell level 8, I get Sorcerer's Reflex. And the right situation is going to allow you to use a lower level spell as a swift action. This can significantly expand the amount of damage your spellcasters can do in a single turn, allowing them to use for example, a level 2 Scorching Ray for damage, and then following that up with a high level Hellfire Ray for damage as well. I forgot to mention that if you're using Ember as your main healer, you probably want to go ahead and take Boundless Healing much earlier than right now to ensure that a lot of those spells, healing spells that are touch, will get extended so that she can use them from much further away. But otherwise, sticking with this build, you can either go Archmage Armor, which is going to allow anytime she casts Mage Armor on herself, it'll give her an armor bonus equal to her mythic rank, or you can scroll down here and get Inspirational Leader, which is going to give her a bonus equal to half your mythic rank +1 to initiative saving throws against mind affecting effects and concentration checks. And it does it for all your allies. That's what I personally give her. I feel like it fits in with her really nice from a role-playing standpoint. I don't have Mythic Level 10, but for that Mythic level, I would personally go for increasing the DCs of evocation spells. I believe it's Spell Focus Mythic. Okay, so now that we've went through all the levels, let's go ahead and look at some of the items that I've put on Ember. I want to do this first because I think it'll inform more of what you see in the spell book. So for boots, let's see. Anytime she kills a demon, her next spell becomes Quicken. Just another way to pump more damage out of Ember. She also gets a +4 bonus to touch attack rolls from her gloves. She's got Melander's Insult Belt, which allows her fire spells to deal an additional 2d6 unholy damage. She gains immunity to fire damage, but gains weakness to cold and holy damage. Usually if I have Ember on my team, she's a good person, so we're not experiencing holy damage, and I'm not worried about cold either. So we found Blackened Rags, which she can wear as armor. It gives her a +10 bonus to Knowledge Arcana checks, and it also increases the DC of spells from the Witch's spell list and hexes by 1. I've only seen, I think, maybe one other item that increases hexes, so definitely wanted to put this on her. Robe of Fire gives her a Fire Aura, which is a +2 DC bonus to fire spells. Then she's also got the Amulet of Blackened Mirror. Whenever where this amulet uses a hex, the DC of the saving throw against it is increased by 1. So these are the only 2 items I came across that will actually increase your ability to use hexes. Highly recommend you go ahead and put them on Ember or Camellia. Blazing Crown gives her a +4 bonus to Charisma, and anytime she deals damage to an enemy through a spell, she gets temporary hit points. I should have probably replaced this. I'm pretty sure there are some +6 Charisma helms laying around, but come on now, the Queen, there's no way I'm getting rid of that. Moving on. Goggles of Pure Sight. This allows her to take a 20 on the next Dispel magic attempt once per day, and she also gets a +1 bonus to overcome enemy spell resistance. Great stuff. Cloak of Carnage gives her a +2 to the DC for all saving throws against spells from the Evocation School the wielder cast. Also great stuff. She gets +7 armor from her braces. And then she's also got an Ashmaker quarterstaff, which gives her a +2 bonus on attack rolls and to caster level for all evocation school spells. Keep in mind, this is a melee weapon, which means you've got to manage Ember carefully. If you right click on the spell and have her automatically use it, once those slots run out, if you don't have her set to a different spell, she'll just run up in melee and start trying to use the quarterstaff. Not a good situation. But the reason why I want to go through the items first is the rings. I found it useful to go ahead and get the red salamander, which for a person who can cast spells spontaneously, which Ember does, it'll grant them the ability to cast the following spells: Fireball, Control Fireball, Fire Snake, Hellfire Ray, Firestorm, and get Fiery Body. Now, you still need to have the spell slot required for the spell. But as you can see, there are spells here, specifically Fireball, Controlled Fireball, Firestorm, and Fiery Body, that are not in Ember's spellbook and that she does not get from having Blackened. So I'm pretty sure I picked this up in Dresden. I would say this is very important to get and significantly increases the efficacy of Ember. And then I also got Ring of Pyromania. Whenever the wearer of this ring deals fire damage to a spell, they deal an additional 1d6 plus 5 fire damage. And you get an additional +2 bonus to caster level checks made to overcome spell resistance. All great stuff. And then finally, going over to our spell book. So at level 1, keep in mind any buffs you see, like enlarge person or reduce person. As long as it's 1 minute per level, that means it's going to be 24 hours. So you can enlarge a particular person and reduce one other person for 24 hours, and then put mage armor on yourself for 24 hours. You could put false life on yourself for 24 hours. Scare and Bone Shaker are nice in Act 1 and maybe towards the beginning of Act 2. Scorching Ray is useful all throughout the game. It's not one of the most damaging spells later on, but because we took Sorceress Reflex, which enables you to use lower level spells quickened, that means you can use Scorching Ray and then follow up with one of your higher level damaging spells. It's a great, great combo to allow you to really pump out damage. Burning Arc is the same way, and is better depending upon the situation. Then at level 3, 6 to 8 of your slots are going to be used for heroism. So that means you've got a few slots that you can use for other things. If you don't have anybody who can use Delayed Poison, Dispel Magic is nice in those earlier levels when sometimes you want to pull a particular buff off of a creature. And then, of course, Fireball, it needs no description. This is a magic staple, being able to set a bunch of enemies on fire at once. Then at level 4, 6 to 8 of your slots, and I'm sorry, I say 6 to 8, meaning your entire party, and then you might have 1 or 2 pets. And if they're frontline fighters, more than likely, then you'll want to have this on them as well. Death Ward, definitely something you want to use. And then the remaining slots, I already mentioned why you want to have Dimension Door. False Life Greater is going to last for 24 hours on Ember. And Control Fireball is nice in that it does not damage your allies. So it can be really nice evocation alternative. And keep in mind, because of all the mythic options we've taken and some of the items we have, our fire spells do a tremendous amount of damage. Then at level 5, you automatically get Fire Snake. It's a great, great spell, and it only impacts your enemies. So very nice to be able to use. I'm not all that big on anything else that's here, to be honest. So you can actually dedicate all 12 slots to just pumping out Fire Snake over and over and over again. Then at level 6, obviously 6 to 8 of your slots are going to be dedicated to Heroism Greater. I took Raise Dead, but you don't really need to use it. You've got the Life Giver Hex. Hopefully you don't have to raise the same party member over and over again in the same day. And the Dispel Magic is absolutely fantastic to be able to pull multiple buffs off of a particular enemy. And Hellfire Ray is is a very, very damaging ray. Great to have. In fact, it's the most damaging ray that you have access to. And by the time you get access to it, you're past level 10. So you're only taking a -2 penalty when you're rolling to attack. So I would say it's definitely well worth going ahead and using Hellfire Ray. And then at level 7, I don't know why Hellfire Ray is listed here. I'm going to assume that's a bug. Or it might be that for the ring, it might be the ring that I have that's bugged, that's having the spell show up at level 7 instead of level 6. But I already mentioned Ice Body is absolutely fantastic, along with True Seeing and Legendary Proportions for buffs. Firestorm is an absolutely fantastic spell. While it is area of effect, it only hits enemies and is going to do 20 d6 damage. And even if they do a enemies that fail their reflex save catch on fire. So it's just great, great stuff. And even if they succeed in their reflex save, they're still going to be hit for half damage. Then at level 8, I already said Frightful Aspect. Great, great to have. Allows you to shake all enemies. Definitely want to make sure all your melee fighters have shattered defenses if you're going to be using this. And then Storm Bolts allows you to stun multiple enemies at the same time. Not fire, so it's not going to be quite as great for Ember, but still good to have in your arsenal. And then finally at level 9, we never saw Fire Body, but she gets that from the ring. Every time you would normally take damage from fire, you are instead healed. You are immune to blindness, critical hits, ability score damage, disease, electricity, poison, and stunning. You have acid resistance 30. However, you take 150% as much damage from cold as normal. You do also get some physical buffs from this as well. I already mentioned Foresight and Heroic Invocation and Mind Blake. All great buffs, all worthy of using. Secret of Serenity is actually from the story. It's something you can pick up depending upon what you do with Ember, so I won't go over that so that I don't end up spoiling anybody. So the only thing that I might have wanted to add into this build is maybe one of those meta magic feats that would allow me to take one of my evocation spells and bring it up to level 9. But I'll be honest, I'm comfortable with where things at. I feel like she is great at doing a whole bunch of different types of damage. If we go into the character list, I think the most of what I took here is pretty self-explanatory, or it was explained during the level up. Obviously, we wanted all the abundant casting so that we can increase how many spell slots we have. Spell Penetration Mythic and the Spell Penetration feats to ensure that we can actually break through enemy spell resistance. Spell Focus and Greater Spell Focus are going to increase your efficacy with spells that use a DC. Combat Casting helps to ensure that even if you're surrounded by enemies, you can still get a spell off. Point Blank Shot and Precise Shot are necessary for spells that are rolling an attack roll. And Improved Initiative so that we can jump out in front and lay down the pain as soon as possible. All of the buffs are about either all the hexes are either about debuffing the enemy or providing a specific buff for party members, and many of them can be extended with Cackle. Sorcerer's Reflex allows us to cast lower level spells as a swift action. I feel like all of this all together absolutely makes sense. I'm not going to go into a fight for this particular build because it's not really geared around damage per se. Like, it's not really about how much you can wear people down. I think it's pretty apparent from everything that you see that if you want to buff party members and debuff enemies, she's got the goods to be able to do it. So hope you all enjoyed this build. Let me know down in the comments. Is there anything that you would have changed? Something I could have done better to make Ember better? Is there some way you would prefer to just blow this up and do something completely different with her? Like I said, she's very, very versatile. So I'm sure there are some people out there who have a completely different way they like to run her. Looking forward to hearing all your comments. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like below, share this content, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.